Hello, I'm Robert Bauer, and I'd like to talk to you about who is my neighbor. In Luke 10, verses 25 through 28, the lawyer asks what he must do to be saved, and the Lord replies that we need to love the Lord with all our heart, soul, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. However, the lawyer wanted to clarify who was his neighbor. In reply, Jesus tells the story of the man who fell among thieves and was severely injured. He stated that a priest happened by and saw the man, but continued on and did not stop. Next, a Levite, who was a designated lay leader, passed by, and he also saw the man, but did not stop to help him. Finally, a Samaritan passed by. The immediate thought of the Jewish audience would be that he would not stop. He was a foreigner that the Jews hated beyond all other foreigners. The Samaritans were Jews that had remained in Israel after Israel fell to the Assyrians. Many Jews were taken into exile in other nations, but some were left. The Assyrians brought in people from other nations to mix with them to prevent them from uniting and rebelling against the Assyrians. The Jews left in Israel had intermarried with the foreigners and were mixed blood, both Jew and Gentile. They did not recognize the temple in Jerusalem, but built a temple of their own. They kept some of the Jewish ceremonies, but they were mixed with worship of foreign idols and did not keep the Jewish laws. They were so hated by Jews that a Jewish person would not step foot in Samaritan territory, but would travel all around the outside of the country to get to the other side. As a result, it was not likely that a Samaritan would stop to help a Jew. Yet Jesus used him as an example of one who is a good neighbor. Jesus told the story to emphasize that we should not limit our concern for others due to either race or nationality. If Jesus spoke the parable today, he would refer to a pastor and a lay leader as those passing by. He might use the example of a Black person during the Jim Crow era, or a German or Japanese person during World War II, or a Mexican farm worker, or a Muslim today. When I was young, I grew up in the trailer camps because I had polio at the age of 2 and had massive medical bills. My dad made good money working in the factory, but most of it went to pay off medical bills. Those living in the camps moved frequently, searching for jobs, so you did not take time to get to know your neighbors. Many were construction workers and were a rough bunch. The residents of the nearby areas looked down on them and often referred to them as poor white trash. However, in areas where people owned their homes and lived there for long periods, people often sat on the porch and visited with others who were walking down the street and often helped each other in times of need. The children ran freely through the neighborhood and knew the families around them. Cities and towns were closer knit then, and people would shop, work, and attend school, and attend church in the area nearby. As a result, they knew those living around them and used to visit when attending their hairdressers, doctors, lawyers, offices, churches, schools, and community meetings, and at work and when shopping, which was usually nearby. Today, many areas are merely bedroom communities. People often work and go to school a long distance from home and often shop in large shopping areas far removed from where they live. If they attend church at all, they often attend a church outside their immediate neighborhood. They only return home for supper and to sleep. People no longer sit on their porch or take walks down the street. Many may live in an area for years and never really get to know their neighbors. They often don't meet their neighbors at school or at work or when they shop, and probably would not recognize them if they met them. Children often have after school and weekend activities and are rarely home. When they are, they often don't go out to play, or if they do, they generally stay in their yard. Families have fewer children, so there are fewer children in the neighborhood. Even church members are scattered and do not meet each other outside of church. In addition, there are few church and school meetings, and very few attend the ones they have. People often don't know those they meet very well and are afraid to talk to them about things that are serious because they're afraid of offending them. The media also spreads fear of strangers. They constantly talk of shootings and robberies. There's often a news story every night or a couple of nights. It seems like bullets are flying everywhere and the streets are no longer safe. But people forget that that is one shooting or one robbery a night in a city of a couple 100,000 people. Your chance of getting shot or robbed on any day is a couple 100,000 to 1. And those are usually more concentrated in poor areas. I'm reminded of the first church I served. When I took over the church, it was in crisis. It had lost 100 members in 5 years and was down to only 25 members. It had 5 highly trained and experienced pastors during those 5 years. None of them could help the church. I was a young, inexperienced pastor, and they only accepted me because no one else wanted it. The church was situated in an isolated community made up of the descendants of Irish Presbyterian immigrants who came to work in the factories. It was a close-knit community which centered around the church. When the factories closed, the workers moved elsewhere in search of work. After only 5 years, the church was left mainly with the elderly and a few younger families who found other work nearby. The homes were bought up by rental agencies, and it became an industrial slum where hardly anyone knew each other. Most had no religious background. Our nation has experienced the same transition in the last 50 years that community around the church went through in only 5 years. Our churches today are facing the same crisis that church did, but it has come a lot slower and over a longer period of time. The church I pastored had a large building that they could not afford and rented it out to a government poverty program during the week to help pay for the maintenance. They did not like having all those unchurched people messing up their church and wanted me to get rid of the program and find a new source of income. They did not realize that in an isolated community like that, there were no other viable sources of income. It took me a while to convince them that if they wanted to draw people to the church, they would have to stop chasing them out and begin inviting them in. The unchurched people were not a nuisance, they were an opportunity. These were people that needed to hear the good news of the gospel. Once the church began reaching out to them and welcoming them, the church began to grow. Within 3 months, they gained 12 new members and felt they could call a full-time pastor. In 1 Peter 2:9, he refers to the church as a priesthood of believers. The priest is one who intercedes for those he's responsible for, which is his congregation. He also ministers to their needs. As members of the Church of Christ, we're responsible for each other and are called to pray for each other and minister to each other. When I was just starting, church members lived near the church and were involved with frequent activities in the church. In addition, they worked nearby and their kids attended school nearby, and they usually shopped nearby as well. As a result, members knew each other. They knew each other when they needed prayer, and they helped each other when they needed help. Today, many members live in a considerable distance from the church, and few attend beyond Sunday morning. In addition, they often work and shop at a distance. As a result, they often don't see each other beyond Sunday morning, do not know when others are in need. You can't pray for somebody if you don't know what they need. Many pastors and church leaders still think the church ministers to its members. I'm reminded of a visit I made to one pastor. After I retired from the Salvation Army Social Services, I began helping churches and social service agencies develop new programs. One church asked me to start a program for some members that had been out of work for a long time. The internet has changed the way that people get jobs. It makes it easier to locate job openings, but harder to get jobs because you're competing against a larger pool of applicants. Many job hunters today do not understand how to navigate the new system. I worked with them for a couple months and they soon got jobs, so I began checking with nearby churches to help their members. I visited one pastor and the secretary informed me he was on the phone and would be out when he was finished. While I waited, I talked with the secretary, who knew me from when I worked for the Salvation Army, and would call to talk to the pastor. When the pastor came out, I told him about the group to help those who were unemployed. He stated that there wasn't anybody in the congregation who was unemployed. When I pressed him, he stated he had an excellent prayer line, and he would know within a couple of days. Yet while I had talked with his secretary, she told me that her husband had been out of work for 4 months and could not find work. She never told the church because she did not feel the church could help with it. She's not alone. Many people came to the Salvation Army and stated they had not told their church about their need because they did not feel the church would help with everyday needs. However, we're called to minister to not only other members, but to those around us, the people living near us, the people we work with, the clerks where we shop, and others we meet every day. However, we can't pray for them or minister to them if we don't know what they need. Neighbors no longer know each other, and people often work for big organizations and don't know those they work with. Schools have consolidated, and parents no longer attend school activities. The ones they attend are so big they don't get to know other parents. Christians need to make deliberate attempts to build bridges to those around them, especially those they live close to. Many people are barely hanging on and need somebody to encourage them and guide them to resources that can help them. Christ stated that in the final judgment, he will separate the sheep from the goats. He will commend those who ministered to those around them who are in need and welcome them. He will rebuke those that did not and will turn them away. An individual or even a church may not have the resources to meet every need, but it should be aware of resources in the community that can help. Thank you.